our Fantasy Football Weekly. And seeing as this is the last week of last week of the preseason, I thought we'd talk about fantasy and those last-minute drafters and what kind of value you can get in those last rounds. But here's a couple strategies I want you to keep in mind. First of all, everybody wants to go for quarterbacks. This is a passing league. Getting a quarterback to put up stats is not a difficult task. Think of this way. Only 4 quarterbacks last year had 30 or more touchdowns. Only 4. And that's your Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks. Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, and Aaron Rodgers. But 15 quarterbacks had between 20 and 29 touchdowns. We're setting records for quarterbacks in a season to throw over 4,000 yards. Last year for the Raiders, Carson Palmer threw for over 4,000 yards and 22 touchdowns. And you can get Carson Palmer with the 133rd pick. And where did I get that number? From Yahoo. They have a spreadsheet that says the average pick of all the players. And his average pick in most leagues is 133, if he gets drafted at all. That's 4,000 yards and 20-plus touchdowns you're getting in the 13th round of the draft. Why would you spend a first or second round draft pick on a guy who's only going to get you 6 more touchdowns and only 500 more yards? It's not worth it. It's all about getting value. Here's what you do. Your first 2 picks, especially if you're in those middle picks, running backs, back to back. Now, a lot of people say, but then you miss out on the top tier quarterbacks. You miss out on the top tier receivers. No, you don't. If you're drafting between 4 and 8 in a standard 12-person league, I actually did some math on this. Let me tell you what you could get with your first 6 picks based on draft positioning. First of all, let's say you've got the 5th overall pick. You can get Marshawn Lynch. You're going to miss out on guys probably like C.J. Spiller. You're going to miss out on Adrian Peterson, Arian Foster. Those guys will probably be gone. But Marshawn Lynch should still be there. There's your first running back. Second running back. Now, a lot of people think this is a reach, but Trent Richardson. I talked about him being underrated earlier with the Browns. Going to have a monster year. He's considered a first-round pick. You can usually get him in the second because by the time those first 6 guys go, you take most of the running backs, people start drafting receivers and quarterbacks. So you can get him in the second round. Third, Victor Cruz, number 1 for the Giants. Had over 1,100 yards and 10 touchdowns last year. With your 4th pick, Reggie Wayne was one of the top 5 leaders in receptions last year, and is probably going to be again because Andrew Luck has no one else to throw to unless you count Darius Hayward-Bay, the overreached first-round draft pick from the Raiders, who got kicked out and now moved to the Colts. And then 5th, go Tony Gonzalez, probably the 2nd or 3rd, definitely a top 3 tight end in the league, up there with Jimmy Graham and Jason Witten. And then number 6, you can get Tony Romo. Oh, before you start booing me, Tony Romo is one of the most underappreciated quarterbacks in the league. And it's because he plays for the Cowboys, let's face it. Jerry Jones doesn't help things because he's undermining his entire team anyway. But look at the year that Tony Romo had last year. He had 28 passing touchdowns, 4,900 yards throwing, 4,900. And he only had about 12 interceptions, very few fumbles, and despite what people think, he's a very athletic guy. He picks up a lot of rushing yards and a few rushing touchdowns here and there. And he's going to put up another good year because he's got Des Bryant coming back, Miles Austin coming back, Jason Witten coming back. He's going to have another very good year, and you can get him in the 6th round. Why are you spending your first-round pick on Peyton Manning, who will probably only throw 6 more touchdowns and probably the same amount of yardage, if not less, when you can get almost the same production in the 6th round? And that's what fantasy is all about, maximizing your picks. Talk about maximizing. Running backs. I talked about going back-to-back. You need to get them early. A lot of teams like to do that platoon stuff where they have 2, 3, 4, 80 backs coming with them on the field. The Broncos are going to use a 3-back backfield. They have a power back, a speed back, and a third down back that can block in the pocket for Peyton and catch passes out of the backfield. Way too many running backs. So you need to get one of those running backs who is the primary ball handler. Guys like an Adrian Peterson, an Alfred Morris, Marshawn Lynch, Jamal Charles, Arian Foster, and Doug Martin. And then you've got good second-round picks like Trent Richardson or Maurice Jones-Drew. And even a guy like a Frank Gore. These are guys that you need on your team, because if you don't, you're going to be getting no production out of the most important fantasy area, and you do not want that. You can't win your league. And if you're paying big money in your league, you definitely need a running back, because I don't want to watch my season go down the drain after I paid $200 to get into a fantasy league because I was too stubborn to go draft Marshawn Lynch, and I just really wanted to get Drew Brees on my team. No. Get your running backs, because you can get value at quarterbacks anytime during the draft. Talking about value and getting them while you can, tight ends. There are 3 elite tight ends in the NFL. 3 only. Jimmy Graham, Jason Witten, Tony Gonzalez. After those 3, it doesn't matter who you have. You're going to have good games, you're going to have bad games. But if you want good games week to week to week, you need those 3. One of those 3. And that's why I had Tony Gonzalez going in the 5th round. If you can get Jimmy Graham there, take him. A lot of people are taking him second round. That's too much of a reach. Don't do it. But if you can get him in that 4th, 5th, 6th round area, he's going to be money, because those 3 tight ends catch more balls and get more yards and stuff than pretty much anybody in the league, including some of the best receivers outside of Calvin Johnson and Brandon Marshall. Hey, if you've got any sleepers and you want to weigh in on this, give me a call, 630-534-0779, or tweet me. I'm at the CSBS, and I've got my Twitter unlocked right here. A lot of cool stories. Oh, speaking of Twitter, you should follow Jay Billis. He likes to do random rap quotes, which I find hilarious since he's got a picture of himself all ripping his shirt open like Superman. He's hysterical. Anyway, back to fantasy football. We went through the running backs and the tight ends, receivers. Always a tricky area because you need so many of them. A lot of leagues, you require 3 starting receivers, and then with all the bye weeks, a lot of people will have up to 6 or even 7 wide receivers on their league. It's a passing league. There's a lot of good receivers out there, so I'm not going to lecture too much on this. A couple guys to watch out for, though. Brandon Marshall, coming off his 3rd hip surgery, and he's still not completely recovered. He's still a little sluggish. He just actually did an interview today from practice saying that he's not happy the way his rehab is progressing. So it's good for us as fans. It's not what the Bears want him to say to the public.
You should never be allowed to talk to people.
They don't want their best offensive weapon telling the world that he's not healthy. But at least for us fantasy players, now we know. Okay, don't take him with your 2nd overall pick. He might be out of week 1. And if he takes a good hit, he could be lost for the season. So take a flyer on Brandon Marshall. And the other one is Pierre Garçon. I do not understand it. People are drafting Pierre Garçon in the 4th, 5th round of their fantasy drafts. This is a guy who's never really done much. He's never had double-digit touchdowns, and that was with Peyton Manning throwing to him. He's only broken 1,000 yards once, and he's never had more than 80 catches in a season. And now he's on a running team with a sophomore quarterback that is going to... It's the Shanahan offense. He likes to run some more, then throw a screen. You're not going to get big numbers out of Pierre Garçon. Don't even dare draft him with a single-digit round. 10th or more would be a good place. And if you disagree with me, give me a call or tweet me, but I'm not touching Pierre Garçon. But here's some of the guys you do draft. Calvin Johnson. He's the one guy that you draft in that 1st round. And points per reception just broke the record for receiving yards with 122 receptions and 1,900 receiving yards. Yeah, you can take him in the 1st round. That's a good pick. And if he drops to the 2nd, then you just got the steal of a lifetime, because that's who you want on your team. We talked about Brandon Marshall. If he stays healthy, if he's there in the 4th, 5th round, grab him up. That's worth the risk then. We talked about Victor Cruz and Julio Jones having a big year. Same with A.J. Green. You know the receivers who are going to have a big years. But there's one or 2 guys that you shouldn't sleep on. First of all, Stevie Johnson, wide receiver for the Bills. The average pick in drafts is 95.7. People are waiting until round 9, 10 to draft this guy. Don't wait that long. He's a very good receiver who's been putting up consistent stats for the past few years. He's a good bet to go well. Now, maybe not in week 1, now that the Bills are starting their 3rd-string undrafted rookie quarterback who is throwing somewhere in the Arena League or Canada or something. I don't even know where he was throwing last year. But Steve Johnson will get his yards, and when E.J. Manuel comes back, he'll do all right. And here's a one that you can really sneak away. Justin Blackmon, he's suspended for the first 4 games. So he is dropping to pick 130. I mean, you're talking round 11 or 12 at this point. Pick him up. Just wait on him for the first 4 weeks because he is a big-time receiver who gets big-time yardage and is a huge target in the end zone. This guy could probably still go for 1,000 yards, even missing the first 4 games, assuming that Jacksonville quarterbacks don't fall down and hurt themselves. A couple other sleepers for you to remember. Carson Palmer. I talked about him earlier. But this guy is going in rounds 12, 13, and you can get 4,000 plus yards and 22 plus touchdowns, and now he has Larry Fitzgerald to throw to, and not just those group of rejects out in Oakland. I'm telling you, take him in the round 12, ride him to success. You can thank me later. You can thank me by tweeting me at the CSBS. And here's the big sleeper, Darrell Richardson, starting running back for the Rams. This guy ran almost for 1,000 yards last year behind Steven Jackson. Now he's the number 1 starter. And they lost Sam Bradford's favorite receiving target. This guy's going to pile up yards like it's going out of style. Draft him. And don't get cute with it. His average pick is 109, which puts him at about the 10th round or so. You know, don't be afraid to take him with your 8th pick, because this guy is going to be a steal. And just remember, there's certain guys out there that get a lot of press and are great players, but they're not great fantasy players. Colin Kaepernick, great player, can throw the long ball, can move with his legs. Not that great for fantasy. They're a defense-first team that likes to run the ball. He throws quick screens and flat out in the flat and things across the middle. He doesn't go deep all that often. He just does it enough so the defense stays honest to open up the running game. It's not their game to throw it downfield 15 times a game. Another person, Andrew Luck. That's a one-trick pony of a team. It's him and Reggie Wayne. They have no running game. Their defense is mediocre. The one good thing to say about them is they're often in shootouts because that defense is so bad, so they throw a lot. But you're going to get interceptions. You're going to get incompletions. And when people start double and triple teaming Reggie Wayne, who is he going to go to? Be careful about Andrew Luck. Don't overdraft him. I've seen people take him in the 3rd round. You don't need an Andrew Luck in the 3rd round. Get Carson Palmer in the 12th. Get Tony Romo in the 6th or 7th. Don't take Andrew Luck with one of your first 3 picks. Arian Foster, been a workhorse. A lot of yardage on him. If you can get him with picks 9 through 12, that's a good pick. If you're taking him with the 2nd overall pick, I'd rethink that one. And speaking of rethinking, Doug Martin for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now listen, I love Doug Martin, and I love what the Buccaneers are doing. They're a lot of fun to watch, and they've got a very balanced offense, and I think Josh Freeman's going to have a big year. However, Doug Martin, in 12 games last year, averaged 66.3 yards. That's about 66 yards per game for 12 games. And then in 4 games, he averaged 164. Now, what that means is at the end of the year, he had a ton of yardage. He was 5th in the league in rushing as a rookie, which is great for him. And he busted out on the scene, and people, especially towards the end, just rode him to success. However, don't forget that 12 out of the 16 games, he was only getting you 65 yards a game. Be careful with him. A lot of people are going to be going for him early. And I'll tell you what, if you draft him early, you could probably make out like a bandit on some sort of trade later on. It's one of those guys who has picks at the end of the first round. You could probably get 2 starters for that price. So keep that in mind. And the other thing is Monte Ball, rookie for the Broncos. Everybody's talking about, oh, Monte Ball, going to work with Peyton. He's going to get a lot of catches. He's going to get all the goal lines. No, he's not. He's part of a 3-part running back committee. He's going to be their first down back and probably their second down back. He won't be in on 3rd down. He won't be in on goal lines. And he's probably not going to get a lot of the pass-catching duties. No, Sean Moreno's going to get that. And he probably won't get that much because Peyton Manning's got his triple-headed monster of doom in Eric Decker, Demaryius Thomas, and Wes Welker. So, like I said, careful with those guys. And don't put too much stock in them. And that's my fantasy segment. Like I said, if you got any sleepers or anything you want to talk about fantasy-wise, give us a call, 630-534-0779, or tweet me at the CSBS. Moving on a little bit, I'd like to take a moment in continuing with this football thing, something that really disturbed me. And I'm sure a lot of